Creating interesting loads for industrial pallets is easy to do. In this video, I'll show you how to quickly model a stack of shipping boxes and a set of 4 storage drums to make perfect pallet loads. You can use your imagination to come up with other ideas. I set aside time to make up pallets and pallet loads as filling projects, and then I set them aside for use in future modeling of industrial scenes. This is a great way to store materials for future projects. We'll use a small drawing board to plan the box layout. 2 basswood strips nailed along 2 edges form the guide rails. You can use any flat piece of wood. I used a piece of melanite here. Use a square to make sure that the 2 edges form a perfect right angle. We'll tape an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of paper on the board, aligned along the guide edges. We can use a drafting triangle on the board to lay out our drawing. If you don't have a drafting triangle, you can also use any square object as a guide. I'm using here a sample for laminate flooring. Check to make sure that it is square. And now you have a perfect tool to use. We're going to draw 2 lines that intersect at 90 degrees on the paper. Notice I'm drawing them about 2/3 of the width of the sample piece so that they intersect at a 90-degree angle. Our pallet size is 1/2 inch by 5/8 of an inch. Measure 5/8 of an inch along the horizontal line and 1/2 of an inch along the vertical line. Now draw lines through these 2 marks that define the pallet. Make sure you use a sharp pencil. Notice I put the pencil point at the mark, move the edge over to it, and then scribe the edge. This is a great way to make a perfect mark. To split the vertical distance in thirds, measure a 3/4 distance on a diagonal and mark at each 1/4 inch interval. This is an old trick we would use on drafting boards before the advent of CAD. Draw a line through each of the marks. Now use a scrap of paper to copy the vertical spacing between the lines and transfer it over to that top horizontal line. We'll now draw a vertical line down through. This will define the row of boxes on the right-hand side. Make a mark halfway between the 2 leftmost vertical lines. Then draw a vertical line through that mark. And now we have 6 boxes in a 2x3 grid on the right side. We'll measure halfway down between the 2 horizontal lines on the left side. Draw a line there. So now you'll see that there are 8 boxes in this layer. This pattern repeats on each layer, just rotated 180 degrees. Remove the paper and cut out the 1/2 by 5/8 layout. From a piece of 1/8 by 1/2 inch balsa wood, we'll cut 4 pieces, each 5/8 of an inch long. Use a miter box and carefully make a cut at exact right angles. We now have 4 pieces. We're going to cut 4 pieces 3/8 by 1/2 inch from a piece of thin cardstock. The color sample cards from a paint supplier are great for this. They're just the right thickness. We're going to use these cardstock pieces to separate the layers of balsa when we make our final stack. That will create the apparent spacing between the boxes on each layer. We now have 4 pieces of cardstock and 4 balsa pieces. You can use a scrap of wood as a base for the next operations. Using a toothpick, place small dots of glue on the bottom of a balsa piece. You do not want a lot of glue at this step. We'll attach the small layout you drew on one of the balsa pieces. Glue that paper to that first piece and then proceed to glue each balsa block to the next one. Use small dots of glue on these pieces also. You'll have a stack, which you'll square up. Clamp it for at least 20 minutes. Now use a razor saw to cut shallow grooves on the side surfaces, using the lines of the drawing as guides. Rotate the assembly to keep your fingers away from the blade. After working on the 4 sides of the assembly, work on the top. You're going to cut through the paper. 2 of the cuts are across the entire top. The other 3 cuts stop at a cross cut, so tip the saw so that it cuts deeply at the edge and almost not at all when it intersects the other line. Peel the remains of the layout paper off of the top of the assembly and separate the 4 balsa pieces. Glue one of the cardstock pieces to the underside of the balsa piece that was on the top of your stack. Center it on the balsa piece. Repeat this with the other 3 balsa pieces. Glue the 4 balsa cardstock assemblies together to make a stack. You'll have a stack now that is 4 layers high. Make sure when you do this that you rotate the individual stack layers so that the joints of the boxes stagger. Use a clothespin clamp to hold the stack together until the glue sets. When the glue is set, remove the clamp. Check your assembly. Now attach a piece of painter's tape to the bottom of the stack. We'll use a beige acrylic paint and a small brush to paint the 4 sides and the top of the assembly. The tape gives you an extra option for holding the stack and keeping the paint off your fingers. When you're done, set the stack aside to dry. Peel the tape off after the paint has dried and glue the stack to a pallet. The finished pallet and load will look like this. We'll use some common wood pencils to make a different kind of pallet load. We'll use the eraser ferrules to make the barrels. I'm discarding the red pencil because the ferrule has some dents. Use a razor saw and a miter box to cut off the eraser end and then cut off the ferrule from the pencil. In HO scale, a pencil ferrule is a 1/4 inch diameter by 9/16, which is pretty close to these dimensions. Clean up the cut ends on a piece of sandpaper. Place the ferrules on the sticky side of a piece of painter's tape. Place the tape and ferrules on a scrap of wood and tape them down. Now you can spray the ferrules. Do this outside or in a paint booth. When the paint is dry, peel the barrels off of the tape. Apply glue to the bottom of each barrel and then glue the barrels to a pallet. If you're having trouble getting them to set properly on the pallet, you can put a little dot of glue on the inside edges of the barrels where they touch. The barrel rims will slightly overhang the narrower pallet width and lie slightly within the longer pallet width, just like in a full-size real-life stack. You can enhance the loads with extra neat additions. I used a small piece of cling plastic wrap used to save food on the stack of boxes in the shot. It looks just like the large shrink plastic wraps that they use to stabilize packed loads on pallets. A small strip of green electrical tape binds the barrels on the other pallet. This would model the new stretch plastic bands now being used. A thinner strip would model the traditional 1-inch strapping used on pallet loads.